Hey, y'all, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Hope the Pro Football Conference Championship games turned out like you wanted, although how many Patriots fans we really have watching this show right now, I'm not quite sure. But nonetheless, if you are a Patriots fan, maybe you're rooting for Boss Andrews, glad to have you with us today. And, of course, we'll turn our attention to college football for our program. It is very busy today. Chip Towers coming up a little later on. We think a lot of fun in store as well, including we're starting off with a little bit of good news maybe for Georgia Rising sophomore DeAndre Swift. We'll tell you all about it next as DawgNation Daily begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
This is a very busy show for us. Let me give you a quick rundown of some of the stuff that is coming up. Later on, before we're done, I think that Auburn basketball coach Bruce Pearl may have taken kind of an unfair shot at Georgia. I'm going to play the audio for you of this. You can tell me if you think the same thing is true as well. I think there is a potential interesting development for Georgia's 2018 recruiting class involving one of the biggest remaining targets on the board for Georgia. We'll kind of deal with that. Chip Towers is going to be here on the program today. Unfortunately, a lot of the show will also be kind of spent talking about what I think is a pretty significant development involving DeAngelo Gibbs. No new news, but the fact that he's not enrolled at classes at Georgia, I think that's a pretty significant development here. We'll spend a lot of time on that. I did not want to start the show with that, though, when possible, especially during the offseason. I like starting the show with good news when it is out there and available for us, and I think we have an example of that. So before we get into the DeAngelo Gibbs stuff, which may end up being bad news for UGA, let me start with some good news here off the top. Obviously, we believe that in 2018, Georgia's got a chance to be, once again, very good. Once again, a contender for the SEC championship. And one of the teams that's really fighting for a spot in the college football playoff once again. We think all that's possible for Georgia in 2018. And a big reason why we think that's true is because while Georgia loses a lot from the 2017 team, both in terms of on-field production, leadership, the tangible and the intangible, what Georgia still has and what Georgia has coming in is itself pretty impressive. We believe that who you have coming in is always more important than who you have leaving a program. And one of the guys for Georgia that's going to be a central figure in the 2018 story, maybe even for years to come beyond that, is running back DeAndre Swift. Georgia fans know this. I think the national media is becoming aware of this now as well. An example of that, Steve Lasson from Athlon Sports, Athlon, a website that's covered college football for a long time, does a really good job with that. I like their magazines. Lasson writes on his list of potential breakout stars for 2018, one of the guys he includes from Georgia is DeAndre Swift. He writes, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel closed out standout careers in Athens by combining for 2,572 yards, 31 rushing touchdowns in 2017. While this duo will be missed, the cupboard isn't bare for coordinator Jim Chaney and coach Kirby Smart. Swift rushed for 618 yards of his own, 3 touchdowns on just 81 carries as a freshman in 2017. He should see an increased role and is likely to emerge as the feature back in 2018. Now, it remains to be seen if that's, by the way, once again, Steve Lasson from Athlon Sports. It remains to be seen if Swift will indeed be the feature back. Maybe freshman Zamir White may have something to say about that, but certainly DeAndre Swift's going to be a big part of the Georgia offense. I think it's kind of nice to see the national media noticing what Georgia fans have known for a while, including Kirby Smart, going all the way back to the month of September. So Swift is a breakout guy in 2018. Well, it certainly sounds like Kirby Smart saw that potential from Swift at the start of 2017. In the early going of his freshman season, way back during September, Kirby Smart was already seeing a lot he liked from the young man from Philadelphia. Here's a little more from Kirby Smart to kind of remind you of that.
He's a very mature kid. He picks it up the first time. He doesn't need 2 reps. He understands the game. He's got great instincts, great hands. I mean, you can put him in the slot. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him on kickoff coverage. You can do anything with the guy, and he kind of gets it. That's why when he was injured earlier in camp, we wanted to get him fixed. We knew he was going to be a player. He didn't need the reps. He needed to be healthy to play.
It was always kind of fun watching a lot of fans from other SEC teams figure out what Kirby Smart knew and what Georgia fans figured out themselves of, wow, it's more than just Chubb and Michel for Georgia. It's actually 3 really good running backs, and even more than that if you want to start talking about Brian Harry and Elijah Holyfield, but at least 3 really dynamic running backs. And the deflated look on a lot of SEC fans' faces, maybe even Notre Dame fan faces, when they realize that Georgia's 3rd running back is just as good as the other 2. And SEC fans became aware that over the course of the season, national writers like Steve Lasson, who I quoted a moment ago, maybe they became officially aware of this during the SEC championship. When it was DeAndre Swift whose touchdown sealed the deal for Georgia in that 28-7 win against Auburn, the game we call DawgNation retaliation. DeAndre Swift was a big part of that. And I thought it was funny after the game, the description that Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm gave of just how much athleticism Swift put on display in that game-winning touchdown. Here's Fromm, to go back down memory lane, talking about the great touchdown that Swift scored against Auburn that day.
Holy cow. All right, so he was supposed to run to the right. All right, and I take the ball. Now, obviously, I give the handoff to him, and he starts taking off to the left. And in my mind, I'm like, man, what are you doing? You know, that joker takes off, and I look, there's a huge hole. Man, he makes a move on a guy, that joker takes off. That's just awesome. You know, I mean, that guy, he didn't run it in the right spot. It doesn't matter. You know, it's just the guy making a play. DeAndre Swift, man, go Dogs.
DeAndre Swift, man, go Dogs. Well said there by Jake Fromm. I also like his use of the word awesome there. That's a pretty good descriptor of the athleticism that Swift put on display during a freshman. He did dazzle at times. But to prove good on the Athlon Sports prediction of being a breakout star for 2018, it's got to be more for DeAndre Swift than just the athleticism, right? I mean, it's got to be that next level component, both in terms of a leader and all the other things that are involved with being a good running back. Picking up blitz protection as a blocker and catching the ball out of the backfield, doing all the little things in addition to the main thing that DeAndre Swift will be known for. And it's not that far from now that Swift's going to be back on the practice field for Georgia, working on doing these things in the spring and then later on during the summer, when Swift will have to develop those additional components of his game to be more than just a nice complementary piece, but potentially the featured piece for the Georgia running game in 2018. The good news here is, at least based on a conversation I had with Swift back at the beginning of the year when we were in California for the Rose Bowl, is that's a role in which DeAndre Swift's very comfortable in, because in terms of how he became sort of confident that he'd be able to play for Georgia in 2017, it was the same kind of practice I just described where he first felt at home at Georgia. When you think about the grind that's coming for him coming up this spring when he takes on an additional level of responsibility for Georgia, that's a grind apparently DeAndre Swift's ready to take head on. Here he is describing his own sort of acclimation to Georgia practices back when he first arrived here this summer.
I mean, just grinding in camp and showing the coaches, like, every opportunity that I get, I'm going to seize my opportunity and do my best ability to wherever they put me on the field. I'm going to just do that to the 100%.
Going to do that to 100%, embracing the grind. That's good news, I think, for DeAndre Swift about living up to some of the potential of maybe being a breakout star. It's also good news for Georgia fans as well, because they know that for 2018, guys like DeAndre Swift are going to have to step up. There is a big need, an open spot, both in terms of leadership and on-field production. It looks like right now, based on our own ideas about this and what the national media is writing, that DeAndre Swift is a pretty good candidate to do just that. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. We're glad you're with us today. No matter how you're accessing the program, whether you're watching us on video at 10 a.m. on the DawgNation Facebook page, checking us out on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, or listening to us in podcast form wherever podcasts can be found, iTunes, SoundCloud. I'll post the show for you at the world-famous DawgNation.com. We're just glad you found DawgNation Daily and glad you are with us today. And as we record this on a Monday, would love for you to make plans to be with us tomorrow night. That's Tuesday night, tomorrow night, when we come to you from the Marlowe's in Sandy Springs for our big DawgNation Countdown to Signing Day event with our friends from Marlowe's there. It's tomorrow night, 6 to 8 p.m., Marlowe's in Sandy Springs. If you're listening to the show either on the radio or on the podcast, I'll give you the address here a couple times. 5590 Prado Place in Sandy Springs. That's 5590 Prado Place in Sandy Springs, the Prado Shopping Center there in Sandy Springs. We'll be there tomorrow from 6 to 8 p.m. I'll be there. Jeff Sintel will be there. Not only will we do a Facebook Live broadcast, we'll do, and these have become really popular, these special off-air conversations we do where Jeff really kind of gives you sort of the behind-the-scenes skinny on recruiting. Some of the stuff either he hasn't written or for whatever reason can't write. Sometimes he'll tell it to you at a Marlowe's broadcast. Tomorrow night's a great chance to do that. My understanding is Tailgate Apparel is going to be hanging out there with us. I believe they've got some giveaways for us. Marlowe's will always give you a free appetizer if you come up, show up wearing your red and black, your Georgia gear. They'll give you a free appetizer with your Andre purchase if you would do that. So come check that out. And we have a very special guest selected to appear, or scheduled to appear. These special guests in the past have been really, really good. Some of the big names associated with UGA recruiting, guys like Dominic Blaylock, Chris Smith from the 2018 class. We've had some great recruits join us. My understanding is another special guest expected to be with us tomorrow night, so please make sure you check that out. All right, when we have Chip Towers coming on about 5 minutes from right now, one of the things that we're going to do with Chip is obviously talk a lot about DeAngelo Gibbs, who right now is not enrolled in Georgia classes. And obviously, as many people have written, I know Seth Emerson wrote about this at DawgNation.com a little bit at the end of last week, there's almost a parallel here between Gibbs' situation seemingly and Trent Thompson's situation. Not because the two circumstances are similar. We don't really know the full story here when it comes to DeAngelo Gibbs. Not all of that or very much of that has been reported. It's somewhat murky, at least in terms of the public proclamation, for why Gibbs isn't in classes. So I'm not telling you that the two personal situations between Thompson and Gibbs are similar, but the fact that Thompson did miss spring classes, sat out spring practice, and then played for Georgia the fall, obviously Georgia fans kind of hoped that would be true for DeAngelo Gibbs, who was one of the biggest members of Georgia's 2017 class. I thought one of the most crucial wins for Kirby Smart in that class, leading to the number 3 overall ranking from the 24/7 Sports Composite team ranking. I thought Gibbs was one of the biggest names in that group. I still remember that moment at the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando when Gibbs made his commitment, his announcement to UGA official. And at the time, he said he had big-time expectations for what he wanted to accomplish at Georgia. And when he said that, a lot of Georgia fans were certainly very happy to hear the words coming out of DeAngelo's mouth.
What can Georgia fans expect to see from you and after?
As much as I can give, I expect a lot. I expect a lot, and they expect a lot from them. So I'm just ready and prepared to go.
It wasn't too long after that Under Armour All-American game in Orlando that I had a chance to catch up with DeAngelo Gibbs myself. Jeff Sintel and I were both at the Touchdown Club of Atlanta Awards Banquet. Really was the same week that Gibbs had enrolled at Georgia to begin his classes as an early enrollee. At the time, we asked him, hey, are you getting settled in? Are you feeling comfortable? And at the time, it certainly sounded like DeAngelo Gibbs was liking life in Athens. Here's a little more from Gibbs.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. And, every day I wake up with a mindset. We got a new day, so work out. We got to get over. We got to overcome it. But, I'm enjoying it so far. The classes are coming great. And, I'm just fitting into the atmosphere of the program.
Fitting into the atmosphere of the program, that certainly sounds good. At the time, this is early January, almost exactly a year ago from where we are right now. Transition to the practices during the spring. Gibbs was thought to be one of the real contenders to maybe be Georgia's star, the fifth defensive back on the field, and really have a big contribution for his freshman season at Georgia. And then somewhere along the way, things just sort of changed. Ironically, one of the things that probably kept Gibbs off the field was the emergence of his cousin, J.R. Reed, who had been a Tulsa transfer, and some thought that Reed was just a add-on to the Georgia roster in order to entice Gibbs to come. As it turns out, J.R. Reed was good enough that there wasn't as much playing time to go around for some of the Georgia freshmen, and Gibbs may have been the sort of negative recipient of some of that, hurting some of his opportunities for playing time. And then, something else goes on, some off-field issues to the point where Gibbs is not traveling with the team to Georgia Tech, even though there was no reason why he should not have been, not really with the team for its postseason destination. And now the future of DeAngelo Gibbs is very much clouded here. Obviously, I think a lot of Georgia fans are rooting very hard for DeAngelo Gibbs. First of all, because I think they like Gibbs as a person. They want to see him, develop and be the young man that he can be. But also because, if we're going to be frank here, DeAngelo Gibbs is also crucial for Georgia as a player. He was a defensive back that could have gone to Alabama, chose Georgia instead. And those head-to-head wins against the Crimson Tide are really the foundation upon which championship teams are built. And when you think about Georgia needing to upgrade its defensive backfield, its defensive secondary, some of those guys from the 2017 class still play a big role in Georgia's attempt to be able to do that, and obviously DeAngelo Gibbs would potentially be at the center of all that. Of course, we also know that in recruiting, one of the reasons why you try to stockpile talent is because some prospects, for whatever reason, it just doesn't quite work out for them during their college years, and there is going to be some attrition. There is going to be a little bit of a numbers game here where you sign 25 to hope to get contributions from 12 or 13. You bring in 17 or 18 4- and 5-star guys in the hopes that about half of those guys will actually live up to that hype. It's not any different for Georgia than it is for any other school in the SEC or any other school in college football. And yet, with that as the reality, Georgia fans still hope for the best from DeAngelo Gibbs. And with that in mind, I'm thinking about something else that Gibbs told us when we interviewed him back in January. Jeff Sentell and I sitting down with him here in Atlanta, not too far from our studio, that he believed that the Georgia team itself, this is Gibbs saying, that they were going to hold each other accountable and keep each other from giving in when things got tough. Let me let you hear a little bit more from Gibbs, whose words then may be prophetic, hopefully, for right now.
I'm blessed to be in the situation that I am, and Kirby and all the coaches and the coaching staff, they are all on the same board, all on the same page, and we all getting the players on the same page, even the newcoming freshmen, and we all feel like a family. It's a brotherhood. It's more so like we all got each other's back. So at the end of the day, nobody's quits on anything, nobody gives up on anything, and we just all push each other to greatness.
Nobody gives up on anything, and we all push each other to greatness. I hope that DeAngelo Gibbs can remember these words right now as he's away from classes, not enrolled at UGA, the family, the brotherhood that he talked about from the Georgia roster. I hope he's able to lean on that and use that, obviously, to get back on the football field and back in classes at Georgia again very soon, and certainly to be in a better place than maybe he is right this moment. We'll find out some more on that when Chip Towers joins us. As I told you, we have a big show for you coming up. A lot of fun later on, a lot of interesting stuff later on. Developments for Georgia's 2018 recruiting class, some strange words from Bruce Pearl maybe after the basketball game on Saturday. We'll do all that coming up. For now, though, here on DawgNation Daily, let's get ready to talk to Chip Towers.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
And I'll say hello to Chip Towers. Chip's got some great stuff up at DawgNation.com. We'll talk about a lot of this on the program today. Chip's counting down the top 10 moments of the 2017 season for Georgia, and there are some good ones to count down. Chip, I look forward to talking to you about some of those during our broadcast today, but I think there are a lot of Georgia fans who are kind of ready for some of that now, right? I mean, the appreciation is beginning for just how much fun the 2017 season was, and, I know a lot of the moments you've already counted down, they've kind of brought smiles to my face thinking back on, really, in some cases, some of the things that may have been forgotten already in what was such a rich and deep season full of memories for UGA fans.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Brandon, and really what I'm finding most difficult about this series is limiting it to 10. I mean, those like you and I and so many Georgia fans who followed the whole season closely and kind of watched every minute of it realize that you could probably do 100 moments. I mean, easily. And numerous of them, falling in the same games. I mean, there were just so many big moments in the SEC championship game, in the Rose Bowl game, and even in the college football championship game that you didn't win. I mean, there were huge moments in that game, unforgettable moments, even though it didn't end up being victorious for Georgia. So that's been the difficult part of it. And then I'm trying early on here, as we're just getting into 10, 9, 8, 7. We'll have 2 more this weekend. It's a weekend series, so they're running Saturday, Sunday. So we'll have 8 and 7 this weekend. And I'm trying to, kind of dig for those little pearls that we've kind of forgotten about, because there were a lot of moments in games, going back to early in the season when we weren't really sure what Georgia had. Now, certainly there were a lot of those in the Notre Dame game, but, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, Missouri, just an unbelievable year in terms of people coming through and making plays. And so I'm going to try to remind us of some of those, and then, of course, all those huge moments that, really none of us will forget about, in the Rose Bowl, SEC championship, college football championship game.
Yeah, we'll talk some more about those coming up in a few minutes. Before that, I guess I do have to kind of take care of what is a little bit more unpleasant business involving DeAngelo Gibbs. And I know there's not a lot out there in terms of, public information about Gibbs' situation. I do get that. What I said before you joined us is that, Gibbs, I thought, was a crucial member of Georgia's 2017 class. If he can be, kind of brought back in the fold, both as a student and as a player at Georgia, I think that's good news for the Bulldogs here. And I think it'd also be kind kind of a nice step forward for Gibbs himself. I don't know how much can be said about this, Chip. What you want to add to the reporting that's already been out there at DawgNation.com. But obviously, a lot of Georgia fans are very, very curious about Gibbs' future, given the way the 2017 season kind of ends for him, the fact that he's not currently taking classes in a similar fashion to the way that we kind of dealt with this with Trent Thompson a year ago.
Yeah. Well, obviously the only new information is the fact that he is not currently enrolled in classes, and that's always a serious situation on multiple levels. One, whatever situation he's dealing with was serious enough that he's not able to balance classes with it at the same time for whatever reasons. And then two, you begin to have a eligibility issue. Anytime you're missing credit hours, those have to be made up somewhere in order to maintain your eligibility. So all we know for sure is that it's a serious enough situation that DeAngelo Gibbs has had to remove himself from classes in order to be able to attend to it. And it's kind of mindful of what we dealt with what Trent Thompson dealt with last spring, last February, when he had his quote-unquote medical issue. That's the only thing I can go on is I talked to J.R. Reed during the college football championship, his cousin, who said it was medical reasons and that he would be, quote, fine and that he would be back, is what J.R. Reed said. That's about as much detail as we have on it. But you get into a real gray area in issues like this, especially when things have been identified as a quote-unquote medical reason. Obviously, there are federal laws protecting that. You have HIPAA laws that we respect as journalists. And, beyond the detail that he's not in classes, which means he's not participating. If he's not in classes, he's not participating with the team in any of the day-to-day activities. And so he's going to be behind in that regard, both academically and athletically.
I think one of the things here, Chip, and this will be the final point for me on the DeAngelo Gibbs subject, one of the interesting things will be is, we started seeing some, now you live in Athens, I don't, but in terms of photos, and you probably saw it firsthand, Trent Thompson was around. Trent Thompson was seen in Athens even if he wasn't going through spring practice. I think some of that's going to be interesting with Gibbs here as well. Do we get some clues as to an indication of where this is going with Gibbs? Does he show up around the program? Is he at pro day, for instance, standing on the sideline? Is he doing some of those kinds of things where he can be seen again? And one way or another, either his presence or his absence, that will be a bit of a clue, even if he's not currently taking classes. Is he still near the program, and is he a face that's seen around the Georgia complex?
Yeah, and we'll be paying close attention to that, obviously, to see when and where he is, how much he's around, how much he's able to do. I mean, Trent Thompson was last spring running on the side with sports medicine director Ron Corson throughout spring practice, and obviously you saw from this season, I don't think it held Trent Thompson back too much. I mean, I think he might have had a better season than most people give him credit for this year. Obviously, he was rotating a lot with Tyler Clark, who terrific player in his own right. But look, as much as Georgia and fans might want to downplay the entire DeAngelo Gibbs scenario, I mean, I think it's pretty serious from the standpoint of how it affects the team. I mean, Gibbs is a guy, after all, that was recruited here to play safety at a very, very high level, and Georgia, has lost a couple of safeties off this team that they would be looking to a guy like DeAngelo to step in. This is his time. So whatever issue he is facing, I'm sure, is getting, 100% focused on, getting the full attention of him and those who care about him. And, all you can do from a football standpoint, if you care about the Bulldogs, is hope that he gets all his situation rectified and can be able to return to the field. Because the bottom line, he's a really good football player who could help Georgia. He was moving up the depth chart really fast last spring when he first showed up.
Yeah.
And, so if he can get back in the fold, certainly that's going to help Georgia on the football field.
You wrote about how 2018 is going to be maybe Kirby Smart's most significant coaching challenge today. And as I read that piece at DawgNation.com, one of the things, Chip, that I thought about was, I think there's this assumption that Georgia's just going to rack up a consecutive string of championships and playoff appearances, much the same way that Alabama has, and that may indeed be true. But I do think it's important to remember that in the SEC, Georgia unseats Alabama's SEC champion this year. Bama had won the 3 straight before that. But in between the Alabama 3 straight and the Steve Spurrier 4 straight in the 90s, it was a different team that won the SEC every season in between that. Tennessee won back-to-back in 97 and 98. But, from 97 to 98, it's no consecutive SEC championships in that stretch leading up to the Alabama run of the 3 years before Georgia won it this year, which just goes to show you that winning back-to-back SEC championships is a really difficult thing to do, no matter how easy Alabama may have made it look from 2014 through 2016. So when you write that Kirby Smart is going to be facing a significant challenge in 2018, the numbers kind of back that up, don't they?
Yeah, and it wasn't really till I got it, kind of got down in the weeds and started looking at that that I came to that conclusion. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, because it certainly can be. I didn't think Georgia was going to do what they did this season, based on numbers and seniority and experience and those kind of things. They don't always dictate everything, but this is a major overhaul. I mean, there's no way you can look at it any differently. I mean, I think Georgia's going to be pretty solid on offense between Jake Fromm and that line coming back, largely intact. Though again, Isaiah Wynn, I'm not sure we fully appreciate the job that he did at left tackle. I think he's going to have the last laugh in this NFL draft when I'm starting to dig into some of these projections. He may go pretty early as a guard on the next level, and he played terrific. But anyway, I digress. I think Georgia could be pretty good on offense. That's a major overhaul on defense, major. And those. It's just not a small. We talked about all year about all those seniors who came back, and not just the seniors who came back, but the heavy senior leadership and how that kind of just drove Georgia's train. That was the locomotive at the front of it. Kirby talked about it all year. Well, that's gone, and for whatever reason, I mean, even this senior class, forgetting whatever the pedigree of the players that are in it that are coming up, it's just not as many of them. It's just not going to be as senior laden of a team. It's a young team. I mean, it's talented. There's no question with all the recruiting that Kirby has been able to do and what he was able to maintain in that first class, and then the 2 he's had since then. There's talent, but there's just not going to be the type of leadership and experience that you had on this last team, and that's not easy to make up.
I liked your piece on Roquan Smith, and Montezuma, Georgia is obviously a very small town, and as you kind of wrote, the median income there is not as high as it's going to be in a lot of the metro Atlanta areas, and it's very difficult to kind of really quantify just how big of a deal it's going to be for Montezuma that their favorite son, Roquan Smith, is about to go on the NFL, be a first-round draft pick, make millions of dollars. Obviously, Georgia fans everywhere are proud of Roquan, but I don't know that any part of DawgNation is more proud of those folks, more proud than those folks in Montezuma are going to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, Montezuma was, this is where I really enjoy the opportunity to do some of these next generation pieces, because I got to kind of parachute in there to Montezuma. I did not know where Montezuma was or much about Montezuma. When I went down there to meet Roquan Smith in May of 2015, I think it was, and I met him there at the school, and was looking forward to getting some time with him after school. But he informed me after I was there he had to go to work. I really, so you're working, this is right before he reports to Georgia. He was putting in irrigation. He was working on a drilling crew, putting in, those farm irrigations, are big, long things that irrigate entire fields. I don't know what you call them, but let me tell you, it is as hard and dirty and nasty of work as there possibly is. I mean, you are literally knee-deep in clay and sand and water, and it was 92 degrees that day, and I followed him and the guy he was working for, a guy by the name of Rory Yoder. That right there completely changed, my impression of it. Before that, it was the flashy Roquan Smith UCLA announcement guy who I thought I was going down there to see. I came away going, good Lord, this kid's got an incredible work ethic and sort of the support of that whole town. Roy Yoder was just a guy who was a booster in that Macon County high school thing and just gave him a minimum wage job before he headed off to school because he needed a little money, and he was busting his butt doing it. But he did that after a post-school workout. And anyway, just having seen that, it's just a tiny town, and he was kind of brought up by a village there. His aunt, Gloria Story, his mother, Shaquana Thomas, all kinds of aunts, all contributed, and then certainly the principal and coach there at that school took him under the wing, and these people are just beaming right now. He's done everything right from the minute he showed up at Georgia, and he's about to be richly rewarded for it, and deservedly so.
Yeah, it's a great story, Chip. I thought you did a good job writing that. Also in the draft, I guess right now it seems like Sony Michel's a little more popular with some of the analysts, and we would presume maybe NFL teams than Nick Chubb is. Not to say that Nick Chubb can't have a tremendous NFL career, but it seems like right now there's some additional chatter about Michel that maybe doesn't exist for Chubb at the moment. Is that kind of what you're hearing?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no question from what you see now. It's amazingly close when you look at the different – and, look, mock drafts are like recruiting. You just – they're not very accurate predictors. But, in some of the drafts, some of the mock drafts, I see Chubb going before Michel. In most of the mock drafts, I see Michel going before Chubb. But here's the key. In all of them, I see Chubb and Michel going, going
you're right.
Relatively early. I mean, second, third round, maybe a little bit later. It's, running backs are kind of a dime a dozen. But the thing is, they're still really, really important to the game. And they're going to take, either one of these guys fairly early. But the general narrative is that Michel is a little bit more versatile of a guy, got a little bit more shake to him, a little bit better catching the ball out of the backfield. Heck, Nick Chubb told me that himself. He said, yeah, he's probably better than me, out of the backfield. But, there's also quite a market for a tough, strong guy like Nick Chubb, too. So suffice it to say, both these guys are going to be drafted, and I think they're going to be drafted relatively early. And I think both of them are going to make money as professional athletes, at least to where they get those NFL pensions, the most important thing for those guys' long-term future. And I think both of those guys will be pensioned before it's said and done.
Yeah, Chip, that's a really good point. We appreciate your time here on DawgNation Daily. We'll look forward to reading a whole bunch more from you at DawgNation.com, and we'll enjoy speaking to you here on the program again very soon as well.
See you, pal.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, I think Chip's right about Chubb and Michel. They're both going to have NFL futures, and, as I've said before, I think that there's an aspect of Nick Chubb's game that it almost gets overlooked, that people think that, he's more of a, the thunder lightning thing always gets used. Sony Michel would be the lightning combo. Nick Chubb would be more of the thunder. But the truth is, I think that Nick Chubb is still incredibly fast, even with the 2015 injury. And if you go back and look at his freshman season, he actually caught the ball out of the backfield a lot more than maybe some people probably realize. I think that he'll probably show out at the combine. He'll have some questions to answer about, just how much, his knee has responded to what happened to him in 2015. But ultimately, I think that Chip's probably right there. That Chubb and Michel both are heading for really bright NFL futures. Something else I wanted to talk to Chip about, we just sort of ran out of time. We addressed this off the top of the interview, that series of top 10 plays the 2017 season for Georgia. I think Chip is right when he says the hardest part about writing a piece like that's narrowing it down to a 10 right now. And I was looking at what he had written at DawgNation.com, and one of the things he wrote about, I think it was like his, I forget if it was number 9 or number 10 or whatever it is, but one of the first ones on the list was the flea flicker for Georgia against Mississippi State. It's one of the reasons why you want to read this series, because these memories are just great to kind of go back and think back upon. But that flea flicker play when Fromm, took the pitch back, I guess it was from Chubb, and then, threw the touchdown pass to Terry Godwin, I thought that was a real seminal moment for Georgia during the season. I think it showed that Kirby Smart wanted to put his foot on the gas and really make a statement against Mississippi State. I think it also showed that Jake Fromm was going to be able to handle kind of everything that it was going to come his way that season. A big, intense atmosphere for Georgia at home. coming off 2 weeks before having been at Notre Dame. A great response there from Georgia, and a great way to remember all that with Chip Towers' countdown piece of the top 10 plays in the 2017 season. That's going to be running at DawgNation.com. As we transition here to our SEC through, I'll remind you the Dog Nation Daily is brought to you in part by my friends at MyBookie. Now, over the course of the weekend, there were a lot of opportunities to get some bets down on those conference championship games. I guess Jacksonville covers the number against New England. Philadelphia covers easy in blowing out Minnesota. Right now, New England looking like the biggest, I think I saw this biggest point spread favorite in the Super Bowl since 2009. So a lot of action, a lot of interest on that. The best way to get your bets down, become a winner, and get paid out fast when you do wins with my friends at MyBookie. They are known for the fast, no-hassle payout. They'll give it back to you in just 2 business days when you win. So check them out at mybookie.ag and use the promo code DawgNation. Your first deposit can be matched up to 100%. But you got to use the promo code DawgNation, spelled DAWG, the website mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. It's as simple as that with MyBookie. So with our SEC through here, one story that I'm seeing a little bit of controversy about online, and I sort of get where this comes from. Patrick Surtain Jr. is one of the top, cornerbacks in the country. He is actually Tyson Campbell, believe it or not. It's Tyson Campbell's teammate. Surtain and Campbell are the cornerback duo for American Heritage High School down in Plantation, Florida, which gives you an idea of the talent that school is dealing with. While Campbell is thought to be maybe a Georgia lean with some interest from Alabama and Miami, Surtain has been kind of an LSU guy, maybe also Miami, Alabama in the mix after a visit for Surtain this weekend. And apparently Alabama interested in more than just Surtain Jr. You may remember Patrick Surtain Sr. is a longtime defensive back in the NFL, and Alabama interviewed Surtain, apparently, at least according to Surtain, for the defensive back coaching job made available after Derek Ansley left to go to the Oakland Raiders. A lot of folks are going to be saying, wait a second, this sort of feels like, dirty pool maybe a little bit. You had this same thing kind of bubble up with KJ Henry not too long ago. The difference there is, I guess Henry's dad really is a coach, though, so were his dad to be interviewed, at least that's his profession already. My understanding, Surtain is not a coach. Some people were, kind of wondering what was going on here. It became pretty quickly, though, apparent that Surtain was not going to get this job. And to Surtain's credit, he said that the recruitment of his son was not going to be tied in one way or another to whether or not he got the job at Alabama as the defensive backs coach. That sort of strains the imagination for some folks, though. This is ultimately much ado about nothing because Patrick Surtain's not going to be the defensive backs coach at Alabama. But there was some controversy associated with this. Jalen Hurts has cut his hair, if you're interested in that. No longer sporting the long dreadlocks. I don't know quite what this means. Maybe it means nothing at all, but a new look has been spotted for Jalen Hurts around Tuscaloosa. I will also tell you one more thing here for our SEC through. I thought it was interesting that Chauncey Gardner, the outspoken defensive back for Florida, was tweeting out over the weekend about the new energy being brought to the Florida program by Dan Mullen. That things are way different now than they were under Jim McElwain. And we'll have more of this on SEC Country Live later on this afternoon. But I think it's very curious that Gardner seems to be seeing this from inside the Florida program. But, man, there isn't a lot of buzz outside the walls of the Gator football complex right now, at least compared to what Jeremy Pruitt, I think, has been able to do quickly so far at Tennessee and maybe what Kirby Smart did in the early going of his start of his tenure in 2016 at Georgia. There's just not seemingly as much energy around the Dan Mullen situation at Florida, although they did pick up a big wide receiver commit this weekend to go along with Emory Jones, who I know they have high hopes for. So we'll kind of follow that as it goes in the future, and we'll make that your SEC through. Okay, so I want to do 2 things before we get out of here on Dog Nation Daily. A little bit of basketball before we're done. Georgia obviously looks terrible in the second half against Auburn in losing on the road on Saturday. We'll kind of deal with that. Let me start with some recruiting stuff here for a moment. So Quay Walker visited Alabama over the weekend after, I guess, at one point in time, this was the scheduled visit for Georgia. After he took the visit to Tennessee a weekend ago, that whole timeline kind of got disrupted. Maybe Walker's now coming the final weekend before signing day. We don't really, I guess, fully know about that. The one that we do know is he was in Tuscaloosa over this past weekend. I think we have actually a tweet here from Mac Wilson that shows him standing with Quay Walker. Now, Walker is still an Alabama commit for what it's worth, but he's been thought to be trending away from Alabama for a while. If you're watching on video, you see Mac Wilson and Quay Walker standing there together. Walker, of course, wearing the Alabama jersey. This sort of brings in, some questions of, are things changing with Georgia and Quay Walker a bit? Is his stance softening on Georgia? After a while, it seemed like he may be trending away from Alabama towards the Dogs. I think right now this is still very much up in the air. But an interesting development on this is what Jeff Sentell said on Friday's episode of DawgNation Daily, that maybe the unknown about Walker may make him a little less attractive to Georgia, given the fact that for Georgia's remaining recruiting slots for the 2018 class, they want to fill them with as many elite players as they can. I thought what Jeff said on Friday on the Walker subject was interesting, especially given the fact that Walker does visit Alabama over the weekend. Here's Jeff.
There's a danger here for me, whereas Georgia might just say, okay, we got 5, 6 quality guys that we have high on our board. There's only going to be a point where we're going to wait so long, where Georgia will wait so long for, I guess a very conflicted, very drama-filled, not so much public drama, because Quay Walker's not granting a lot of interviews right now, but that just seems like another complicated recruitment coming out of Crisp County. And there may just come a point, no matter how vastly talented Quay Walker is, that Georgia hears enough yeses from enough quality guys at the top of their board that Georgia might just choose to look elsewhere.
I like Jeff's phrasing there. Another complicated recruitment coming out of Crisp County. Obviously a throwback to Marcavius Big Cat Bryant from a year ago, choosing Auburn over Georgia and kind of everything that went on with that. Listen, I've heard from a lot of y'all in the comment section. Some of y'all, like Quay Walker more than a guy like, say, Otis Reese. Some of you like Reese more so than Quay Walker. I think Jeff's word there is probably pretty accurate. It's complicated. Do you want to wait on Walker at the expense of some of these other guys, even including guys other positions like Tommy Bush or maybe even a Rick Sandage, who's kind of in the mix now? Or is Walker good enough to be worth waiting on? We'll have Jeff Sentell back on DawgNation Daily tomorrow. We'll talk more about that. But the Quay Walker situation certainly is at least full of drama and intrigue at the moment. Speaking of recruiting, let me also transition to basketball here for a moment, because I said I want to talk a little bit about the basketball game before we close out the show. Georgia does lose to Auburn over the weekend. Really good first half, really bad second half. And when the game was over, Bruce Pearl goes in the SEC Network, and one of the guys that shined for shined, whatever the proper past tense is, Bryce Brown. Pearl mentions him in the SEC Network. Maybe a little bit of a shot at Georgia here. Here's Bruce Pearl.
We gave Bryce Brown a chance to take this game over, and he clearly did. Bryce from Georgia. Obviously, Georgia gets their pick of the litter there. They didn't recruit him. That meant a lot to Bryce.
So he says that Bryce Brown's from Georgia. Georgia didn't recruit him. Therefore, Bryce Brown had some sort of extra motivation in the game against Georgia. Listen, if you're not watching on video, I roll my eyes at that about as much and as intensely as somebody can roll their eyes. Without getting too deep in the weeds here, Georgia and Auburn go about their business in recruiting and basketball very, very differently. And for Bruce Pearl to act like somehow Georgia's got some sort of leg up in the conversation here when it comes to recruiting. That somehow Georgia wouldn't prioritize a kid. Georgia and Auburn are sort of. Georgia and Bruce Pearl in particular are sort of forced at times to kind of go about their business in a very different way. So I thought that Bruce Pearl's statement there was a little bit out of bounds and a little bit inappropriate for a guy that may have a hard time even holding on to his job at the end of the season because of recruitment. I thought that Pearl's stance there was a little bit distasteful. But obviously the bigger deal is the fact that Georgia loses the game. And, it continues to be frustrating that, Georgia's got Yante Maton. He's leading the SEC in scoring. At times it seems to be almost inconsequential. It almost seems that Georgia can't seem to use him enough to get other players involved, create spacing and opportunities for other players. And certainly in the second half, Georgia went a long stretch but didn't score at all. That certainly seemed to be the case there. Tournament hope's still alive, but for now, kind of on ice. Of course, speaking of rivals, Gator Hater Countdown, 278 days from right now, Georgia gets another win over Florida. We'll see you tomorrow on DawgNation Daily. And if you're watching us on video, we'll look forward to kind of getting into your comments. If you want to talk some basketball, we can do that. Disappointing loss for Georgia to be sure. Tim Tatum says once Auburn goes on probation. And that was kind of my point with the Bruce Pearl, comment, is that, Chuck Person, one of the assistant coaches, is gone from the program. And I have no idea about the Bryce Brown, recruitment. I can't speak to that one way or another. But in terms of Pearl, his role as a recruiter, him bragging about recruiting wins over any SEC program, seems somewhat inappropriate given the fact that he had a show cause penalty when he left Tennessee, and at Auburn there is still some very murky circumstances surrounding this team with a couple players not playing, and so listen, Pearl obviously was in a good mood after the game. That's why he says what he says, but that to me sort of it didn't quite set the right way with me. But obviously for a lot of Georgia fans, the performance on the court is what's going to be a little bit of a problem there. And Georgia obviously trying to regroup here. They'll play, I believe, Arkansas at home on Tuesday, looking for an opportunity to get back to winning ways here after really letting a winnable game at Auburn slip away after having the big first half lead. A lot of talk in the comment section about recruiting and, Leon O'Neal. Jeff's going to be with us tomorrow on DawgNation Daily. We'll get kind of more into O'Neal. What I said about O'Neal on Friday, and it was Matt Todman who brings up Leon O'Neal. I was a little bit interested in just sort of how quickly O'Neal kind of emerged as this guy that Mel Tucker's going out to visit. Given the fact that, it seemed that Georgia had a finite number of scholarships left for 2018, and it seemed like there was more than plenty of names to potentially slot in there. When you think about, Tommy Bush, the potential of a Rick Sandage, whatever's going to happen with either Otis Reese, Quay Walker, in another world, maybe it would have been both. Tyson Campbell, who, and I thought it was interesting that Campbell does take the visit to Alabama. There was some online chatter that he seemed to be enjoying himself during the parade, and yet when it's done, you don't really have a lot of flurry of online opinion about the visit changing things for him. It seems like if you're a Georgia fan, maybe Georgia kind of dodged the bullet on Campbell's visit to Alabama. I don't want to read too much into that, but just based on the online chatter, it seems like Georgia's still in okay shape with Tyson Campbell on the heels of the Alabama visit. But O'Neal was the kind of interesting name to emerge there because I thought that Georgia already had enough elite players it was chasing for the spots that it had remaining. And I thought that Georgia signed a huge number of guys for 2017 that seemed to do what Leon O'Neal does. But Jeff, high on O'Neal. Jeff, a believer that O'Neal is one of those potential 24, 25 best guys available, and you take him regardless of position fit, and maybe that's the case there. Miriam Martin Corbin unhappy with Auburn coming off the heels of the basketball loss. Yeah. David Hogue got his own countdown going here, counting down 313 days to the revenge at Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Alabama. That's certainly something to think ahead to, and the opportunity to hopefully get that. I know a lot of Georgia fans are going to have a bad taste in their mouth until that does happen. Miriam Martin Corbin, also the nice question, how is Cesar? So we've gotten really good news from Cesar. For those of you who are not aware, we have a colleague who works with us, and he was involved in a car accident. I guess it was last weekend, and it was a very serious accident. Very serious accident, and there is still a long road to recovery for Cesar. But man, it seems like he's doing really well. He's responsive. He's kind of coming around. It seems like just the collection of news that we've gotten here as of late has all been really good. So he's down in South Georgia. I haven't had a chance to see him personally, but some of our colleagues have been down to see him, and they've come back all smiles and happy to report good things here. So I appreciate y'all asking, and I wanted to make y'all aware of kind of some of the stuff we have going on here because the team of people that we do DawgNation Daily with and SEC Country Live as well, and for the most part it's kind of the same team, we spend a lot of time together, and a lot of what you see if you watch the show, what you see on the screen is the work of other people. You hear me talk and ramble on for an hour, but the other stuff that shows up on the screen is all somebody else's doings. Really, just about every graphic that you see, on many of our broadcasts, a lot of these graphics, Cesar made a lot of that stuff. So, especially with a lot of the SEC Country stuff and things like that. So yeah, he's a big part of our team, and he's going to get well and be back with us again soon. We're really excited about that. Anthony Prophet says the basketball game was brutal to watch. How can you lose that one? Here's my frustration with Georgia basketball, and I'm going to do this really, really quick because I know most of y'all want to talk about football. Georgia looks less like the Golden State Warriors than any team I think that plays organized basketball anywhere. the way that, and if you watch any NBA at all, you know, I mean, Golden State is all about having fun, right? It's flying up and down the floor. It's creating a bunch of space for penetrators. It's creating opportunities for jump shots. It's just an entertaining brand of basketball. You don't even have to like basketball that much to like what Golden State does on the floor. If you watch any NBA whatsoever, you'd look at Golden State and say, hey, you know what? That's pretty fun to watch. Georgia is if it is possible to be 180 degrees diametrically opposed to a Golden State, that's what Georgia is. It's not pace and space. It's a bunch of guys, you know, standing, you know, very, very close to each other. And you've got the leading scorer in the SEC who I think ought to be utilized more as a passer than he is. You know, a lot of times Mayton catches the ball and, you know, he just hesitates to pass out of that. All of a sudden an opportunity to create a penetration lane or an open jump shot just not there. You compare what Auburn does in the second half, and listen, a lot of folks don't like Bruce Pearl. I get why. I understand what that's all about. But the one thing you have to admit is he's designed an entertaining brand of basketball there at Auburn in a way that Georgia just doesn't have going on right now. So, you know, I'd like to see Georgia be better and win more games no matter how it happens. But in terms of a sport that's having a hard time finding a foothold among a fan base right now, playing a more entertaining brand of basketball might be a good start there as well. And one of the most frustrating things about Saturday was not just Georgia losing the lead, but how much more entertaining Auburn is than Georgia. John Arena says it's because Georgia doesn't have anybody but Yante Mayton. That may be true. Anthony Prophet says kind of the same thing. And, you know, listen, when you look at some of the other, you know, complementary pieces at Georgia, whether it be Hammond's the freshman or Turtle, who was a pretty big recruit. I mean, Georgia took Turtle from UConn. Wasn't he a UConn commit at one point in time? And that's a program that's won national championships. You know, if they had a little bit more space, if they were in kind of a more open, you know, flowing offensive system, would they look better as players than they do right now? That may be a question worth asking. Zach Smith, getting back to football here, says, can't wait to see how we incorporate our new weapons this year on offense. Defense may take a slight step back, but our offense will be special this year with Zeus, Fields, Cook, plus Fromm, and the offensive line. And it's that final point that I think is maybe the most interesting of all the things you mentioned about the new look offense for 2018. The fact that I believe that the offensive line in 2018 is almost certainly going to be better than even this very good offensive line in 2017 was. I just think you have a much stiffer competition this spring and the summer between, you know, guys who are a year older. And just look at Ben Cleveland, for instance, here. Cleveland not ready to play as a true freshman, even though Andrew Thomas was. Cleveland wasn't. But look at how much better he was as a redshirt freshman in 2017. It's almost like he was a much more polished, much more focused player. And that year of watching and you know, developing his body and everything else that might have gone on there, boy, that really seemed to pay off for him in a big way. Give that same year to Notori Johnson, to Justin Schaefer, to Isaiah Wilson, who is probably the most similar in terms of the recruiting profile coming out of high school. Give them that extra year, which you just did for 2017, and watch how much better those three guys are going to be this spring and heading into the summer. I think that Georgia is in a position now where it's offensive line competition to find a combination of five guys. With all due respect to Isaiah Wynn, who is a terrific, terrific player. We're going to talk more about Wynn on DawgNation Daily this week. But this Georgia offensive line in 2018, I expect to be better. And I expect all the skill position players, quarterback included, to benefit from the upgrade that may happen to this offensive line if it really does go down the way that I think it can. Vernon Luzier says, how is Zamir White doing with his recovery? My understanding is, based on what I've heard, based on what I've read, is that White is approaching his recovery very much the same way that Nick Chubb approached his, with that sort of superhuman intensity. And I guess the good news here is there is at least a pretty good chance, probably better chance than not, that the White injury nowhere near as severe as what Nick Chubb dealt with in 2015. And that, you know, White, who's made it a goal to, you know, be a very active, fully participating member of the 2018 roster for Georgia and out practicing for Georgia, you know, this summer. That's an exciting thing to consider here. And when you think about Georgia, who plays Austin Peay, I believe, in week 1, goes to South Carolina in week 2, maybe that extra week in between, the start of the season and Georgia's first real consequential game, maybe that's the kind of week that White could use as additional recovery to be ready to go maybe against South Carolina. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, and I don't want to get too optimistic in terms of the assessment on him, but it certainly seems like that's what he's pushing to be able to do. Justin McPeak says, speaking of running backs, what about Holyfield and Harrion? Are they in the backfield a lot, or is it just Swift, Zeus, and Cook? So my guess is that, if you want to think about week 1 against Austin Peay, DeAndre Swift gets the first carry of the season, right? And my guess is, and this is just a guess, that, both Holyfield and Harrion would be above James Cook in the pecking order there, and that Zamir White probably doesn't play against Austin Peay, right? He may play later in September, as we just said, but not that week 1 game. And so I really think at that point it's that audition between Harrion and Holyfield, who've both shown flashes at times. Holyfield may be a little bit more popular with Georgia fans given the fact that he played high school football in Atlanta and got the famous last name, and he has justifiably been very good when he's played. He may be a little bit more popular with Georgia fans, but Harrion's shown his moments as well. And so that Austin Peay game, much like G-Day and spring and summer practices, that Austin Peay game might be the audition there for either Harrion or Holyfield to show that they are the guy that deserves to be in that group. There's going to be room for 3 backs. We've seen that from Del McGee. He likes to have 3 backs getting carries, not just the third guy in sort of mop up garbage time duty. We've seen 3 backs carry the ball for Georgia in the first quarter of games, certainly in the first half of games. They're going to be 3 backs that play for Georgia, and my guess is Holyfield or Harrion would be more likely to be that guy above James Cook, at least for the first year. So we shall see. Cheston Wainscott making his case for Kevin Butler to be the 10th assistant coach for Georgia. I love the Hall of Fame kicker. My guess is that Kirby's going to want to use that 10th spot for a real alpha dog recruiter there, and that's my guess of how he's going to use that. Stephen John Spivey says if Holyfield can hold on to the ball, he'll get a lot of carries in 2018. I think there's a very good chance that's true. A couple more comments here. Drew Miller says, I don't think the running backs will give the same 1-2 punch this year as Lightning and Thunder, meaning what Sony Michel and Nick Chubb were able to do a year ago. It may not be quite the same as it was with Michel and Chubb, but I still believe, and this is not just me, hopefully not just me blowing smoke here and just sort of saying what people want to hear, I still think the Georgia running back group next season has a chance to be a real strength for the team. Ro Hawkins says Holyfield running back kickoffs. Yeah, I think he's an interesting guy in that respect. Charles Kaiser says Holyfield could play fullback. He certainly, I guess, did play fullback a little bit for Georgia at one point during the season. Was it the SEC championship game that he played a little bit of fullback? I forget which spot it was. He overall may have an athletic profile a little too high for that, but I understand where you're coming from on that. Neil Landon Jackson got his Own the East T-shirt in the mail. Neil, glad to hear about that. Hopefully all of you who've won from our giveaway not too long ago got your T-shirts in it. And by the way, I cannot say too much about this right now, but we actually have another really cool T-shirt we're going to be giving away soon. I don't know when we're going to do it, but it's a really cool one. It's a brand new design, brand new, never been seen before. I'm really proud of these things. We will do those here coming up in just probably the next few weeks. Wayne Folan says Georgia needs a stronger schedule. Georgia does go on the road to LSU this year in 2018, but obviously it's missing that high-profile non-conference game the way you had North Carolina for 2016, the way that Georgia went on the road to Notre Dame for 2017. Irish come to Athens for 2019, but for now, that big high-profile non-conference game is missing, and some Georgia fans are sort of noticing that. Diedrich Frazier says if you haven't seen Zeus, watch his video. He and Swift will be beasts together. Yeah, I believe they probably will be. Final comment here belongs to Philip Jordan Wells. There's been some talk in the comment section today about the 10th assistant coach. Philip asked about Tyson Summers. Summers was hired, but not as the 10th assistant. According to the reporting from Seth Emerson at DawgNation.com, Summers is going to basically be a quality control employee for Kirby Smart in Georgia. The 10th assistant coach for Georgia is yet to be filled, so that's the issue on that. All right, so we'll get ready to wrap up for today. We're going to be back 3 p.m. Eastern Time for SEC Country Live this afternoon. Would love to have you join us for that. If you can, make some time available for us. We're at Marlowe's tomorrow night. Marlowe's in Sandy Springs. Really fun broadcast coming up there. Special guest going to be on hand as well. Love to have you with us for that. And I'll be back 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for another episode of DawgNation Daily Live on video. Between now and then, if you missed a portion of today's broadcast, you want to hear the audio version, we'll post the podcast for you at DawgNation.com. Y'all have a great day. Thanks so much for being with us here today, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.